Before we begin, viewers are advised that the following content is intended solely for educational and entertainment purposes. What follows is the verbatim courtroom testimony from the federal trial of Sean Diddy Combs, as reported by Inner City Press.
We're plunging into a story that's really ignited conversations and sent some shockwaves through the entertainment world.
That's right. Today's deep dive focuses on a high-profile trial involving Sean Diddy Combs that reportedly took a really dramatic turn with some, well, truly surprising testimony.
And the sources for this dive, they're drawn directly from reports of verbatim federal courtroom testimony, specifically looking at the appearance and, the statements of actress Jada Pinkett Smith, plus other related details in the reporting.
Yeah, our mission here is to unpack the key points from this unexpected testimony, really digging into an alleged loyalty agreement, its reported context, and the potential wider implications.
Right.
And just to be absolutely clear for everyone listening, everything we're discussing today is based only on the information provided in these specific source materials. We aren't going beyond that.
Okay, great. Let's dive right in then. Because according to the source material, this whole thing started with a moment that just, boom, brought the courtroom to a standstill.
Absolutely. You have to picture the scene. The courtroom's already tense, right? They've been hearing other testimony. And then, reportedly, just out of nowhere, a name gets called that it seems like nobody expected. Jada Pinkett Smith.
Wow, and the source says the room reacted, like audibly.
It did. Reportedly, you could hear gasps. Even the prosecution lawyers seemed surprised, which the source kind of suggests might point to this being a very last-minute thing, maybe even a personal decision by Jada herself to come forward.
Huh. So she enters. The source says she's wearing like a subdued black suit, face unreadable, walks up to the stand.
Puts her hand on the Bible.
Yeah.
It sounds like a really dramatic moment.
Definitely. And what was her reason? Why now, after almost 20 years?
Well, according to the source, she explained she'd been following the trial, hearing these other testimonies, stories of alleged coercion, weird documents, veiled threats, and something just clicked.
She realized her own experience, something maybe she'd brushed off or didn't understand back then, could be part of a much larger, much darker system.
Exactly. The source quotes her saying something like, she felt she no longer needed protection and just had to tell the truth. She reportedly said, back then I saw the tip of something I didn't understand, but now I see the whole iceberg.
That's a powerful image. Gives you chills.
It really does. It sets the stage. And her testimony, according to the reports, took the court way back to an alleged meeting in 2004.
Okay, 2004. What was the setting?
Right. She reportedly described being invited to a private meeting, just her and Diddy, in a high-end suite at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel. Very upscale place.
And the setup for the meeting, what was the, official reason she was there?
According to the source, it was pitched as a discussion about a potential philanthropic collaboration, something involving music, activism, community development.
Okay, that sounds plausible on the surface.
Yeah, she reportedly said it sounded normal, like something Diddy would pitch, totally standard Hollywood meeting almost.
But the actual environment in the meeting was different, specific.
Reportedly, yes. Very specific. She described being alone with him. He was dressed all in white. There was jazz playing softly from a little Bose speaker, curtains drawn, lights dimmed.
Creating a mood.
Seems like it. He offered her champagne, which she reportedly declined. And she described him as calm, but almost weirdly calm, like he'd rehearsed the whole thing.
That detail, rehearsed, is fascinating. It suggests it wasn't spontaneous.
Not at all, based on her reported description. So after a bit of this setup,
What happened next?
the source reports she said Diddy excused himself for a moment, walked over to a small bar area in the suite, pulled out a black leather folder and just handed it to her.
No explanation.
Without a word, according to the report.
Okay, the folder. And this is where the alleged loyalty agreement makes its appearance.
Precisely. She reportedly thought, okay, maybe this is the pitch deck or the contract for the charity project. But then she saw the label on it. Loyalty agreement.
Loyalty agreement. That's not a standard business term. How does she react?
Reportedly, she was baffled. Initially thought it had to be some kind of joke. She said she laughed nervously and even asked him something like, is this some kind of hip-hop Scientology thing?
Hip-hop Scientology thing. Wow. And Diddy's response, did he laugh it off?
Nope. According to the testimony as reported, he didn't laugh at all, just nodded slowly and said, it's protection for both of us.
Okay, so she's holding this document. What did it look like? What did it say?
It was typed reportedly about 7 pages long, but here's the thing. No legal letterhead, no indication it came from any law firm. Just This document.
And the tone.
She used one word, reportedly. Terrifying.
Terrifying. Okay, can you give us some examples from the source? What specifically made it terrifying?
She reportedly detailed several really chilling clauses. It allegedly demanded eternal discretion regarding all matters personal and professional.
Eternal discretion. Okay, that's intense.
Right. And it didn't stop there. It referenced alignment with the inner circle. And then, reportedly, something truly bizarre. Submission of the soul to the greater good of the legacy.
Wait, submission of the soul. Are you serious? That's miles beyond a typical NDA.
Exactly. It's not legal language. It's something else entirely.
Yeah.
She reportedly said parts of it didn't even sound human, that it felt ancient like a pact.
A pact.
Yeah. And it allegedly had these vague references to unnamed people, kind of ritualistic expectations, and penalties for betrayal. Very unclear, very ominous.
And the core ask wasn't money or anything tangible like creative rights.
According to her testimony as reported, no, not at all. It was asking for silence, obedience, compliance forever.
Forever.
Forever. And another detail that reportedly really struck people in the courtroom. There was a signature line at the end, with her name already typed below it, just waiting.
Like it was a foregone conclusion she'd signed. That's incredibly presumptuous and kind of creepy.
That's the feeling she reportedly described. She felt sick, like she was being recruited for something she didn't understand and definitely didn't want to be part of.
So what did she do?
She handed it back. She handed the folder back and said no.
Just no. And how did Diddy react to the refusal? That's when the mood changed.
She reportedly described a palpable shift in the room's energy. Said it felt almost spiritual and not in a good way. The jazz music stopped. Diddy's expression reportedly darkened. He leaned forward and his voice became low and slow.
And the source mentioned she remembered specific phrases, even years later.
She did. She reportedly stated the original document had somehow mysteriously disappeared over the years, but certain lines were just burned into her memory.
Like what?
One clause she reportedly recited was, "The undersigned agrees to uphold confidentiality not only in this life, but in all spiritual transitions thereafter."
Whoa, hold on. Spiritual transitions thereafter?
Yeah.
After death?
That's apparently exactly how she interpreted it. Reportedly, she laughed nervously again and asked him if it, fired her after she died.
And his response?
According to the source, he looked her dead in the eye and said, "You're starting to get it."
Chilling. Just absolutely chilling. What else did she recall from it?
Another line reportedly was, "Any knowledge gained in sacred space shall remain sacred, never to be uttered in earthly court, church, or public sphere." That phrase, sacred space, is interesting.
Definitely. Anything else?
She also mentioned references to some kind of hierarchy of silence, like levels you unlock through demonstrating loyalty. There were mentions of tests, gatherings, and this phrase, the selection, which apparently appeared 3 times but was never defined.
Tests, gatherings, the selection. It sounds cult-like.
That's the implication that hung in the air, according to the reports. And then there were the consequences for breaking this alleged pact.
Right, what were those?
The clause reportedly stated, "To break silence is to break the bond. Breaking the bond carries consequences divine and otherwise."
Divine and otherwise. There it is again. That strange mix of the spiritual and the earthly.
Exactly. It wasn't just threatening legal action or, financial ruin. It was implying something more profound, more inescapable.
So she says no, hands it back, the mood shifts, and then he gives the warning.
Reportedly, yes. The most infamous line from her testimony. He looked at her and said, "Low and slow, you'll regret it in the next life, not this one."
In the next life. Wow. Did she think he meant a physical threat or something metaphysical?
She reportedly clarified she didn't know exactly, but it felt like a curse.
Yeah.
Like he genuinely believed he had the power to reach into something eternal.
And did she take that threat seriously?
When asked directly, she reportedly said absolutely, because she explained it clearly wasn't a joke to him. He seemed to believe it.
And it wasn't just that one chilling line, right? He allegedly listed practical consequences, too. Things that could happen in this life.
The source reports she testified that he did. He apparently laid out how her career could suffer. Roles would suddenly dry up. Projects she was attached to would mysteriously fall apart. Certain producers would just stop calling. People might distance themselves from her, maybe for their own safety.
So it was a two-pronged threat. This sort of metaphysical curse and concrete career sabotage.
According to her testimony, yes.
Yeah.
A complete package of intimidation. And she reportedly noted he never raised his voice, never touched her, but she still described it as the scariest moment I've had in Hollywood.
I can only imagine. What were his alleged final words as she was leaving?
Reportedly, as she was getting up to leave, he smiled again. She described it as the same rehearsed smug grin from before. And he told her, just think it over. You'll see. Everyone always comes back.
Everyone always comes back. That sounds so ominous in that context, like resistance is futile.
Completely. Reportedly, she just left immediately. Didn't say goodbye. She said she was shaking so hard, she fumbled trying to put the key in her car's ignition.
Just reeling from it.
Totally. She reportedly realized in that moment she'd seen a side of him she absolutely wasn't supposed to see. And she knew, whatever this thing is that he's running, it's bigger than just parties and rumors.
It sounds like that fear didn't just disappear when she drove away. It lingered.
It absolutely did, according to her testimony. She reportedly explained her decision to stay silent for all those years wasn't about being complicit, it was pure fear. She told the court she carried that fear like a shadow.
Constantly looking over her shoulder, wondering who else might have been approached.
Reportedly, yes. She described scanning rooms at industry events, looking for subtle signs, maybe someone carrying a similar black folder, or using that weird specific language she heard, or just seeing that hollow look she reportedly saw in Diddy's eyes in others.
Did she notice patterns?
She said she started noticing patterns, yeah.
Yeah.
Women who would suddenly disappear from the industry, or others who stayed silent but seemed deeply uncomfortable, always in his orbit. She felt like they were trapped in something they couldn't speak about, and she felt like she had just barely escaped that same fate.
That must have taken a huge psychological toll.
According to the source, it did. She reportedly talked about having recurring nightmares, this constant feeling of being watched, even getting silent phone calls with no caller ID showing up.
How did she cope with that?
She tried journaling, reportedly, just writing things like, just breathe, to calm herself down. But then she got so scared that the journal itself could be found, she actually burned it.
Burned it. Wow. That speaks volumes about the level of fear.
It really does. And she reportedly kept all of this secret, even from Will Smith, for years.
Why?
She reportedly said she just couldn't explain it in a way that wouldn't sound crazy, didn't want him to think she was paranoid.
So after carrying this fear, this secret for nearly 2 decades, what was the catalyst? What finally pushed her to testify?
She reportedly said it all came back when the trial started and the testimony started coming out. Hearing other people talk about their experiences, NDAs, coercion, veiled threats, even some of that strange spiritual language, it was like an echo of her own past.
It validated her experience.
Exactly. It made her realize it wasn't just me. She reportedly said she understood then he was doing this to everyone, or at least trying to.
And even though testifying would be difficult, reopening old wounds, putting herself out there,
she reportedly felt the silence had become unbearable, a heavier burden than the risk of speaking out. She reportedly told the jury, I used to think staying quiet would protect me. Now I know silence is what protects him.
That's a powerful statement. And then things shifted again in the trial, right? The prosecution reportedly presented evidence that seemed to corroborate her story.
They did. This was apparently a major moment. Reportedly, they introduced 2 additional loyalty agreements that had been recovered during investigations into Diddy's former employees.
From different years.
Yes. One allegedly dated 2007 from a former assistant, and another from 2010 involving an ex-dancer.
And these other documents, did they contain the same bizarre elements Jada described?
Reportedly, yes. While the formats and maybe some specific language were different, the core unsettling elements were mirrored. Clauses about silence potentially extending beyond death, references to eternal contracts, this emphasis on aligning with a grand mission or legacy, often through personal sacrifice.
That must have landed like a bombshell in the courtroom.
You can imagine. Reports say the jurors were visibly rattled as they were looking at these exhibits, reading these clauses.
And then they brought in an expert, handwriting.
Exactly. A forensic handwriting expert reportedly testified. And the conclusion, according to the source, was that handwritten notes, things like underlines, comments in the margins, and a specific cryptic symbol found on all 3 documents, Jada's described one plus the 2 recovered ones, were consistent with known examples of Diddy's handwriting.
Wow. So connecting him directly to annotations on all 3, what was the symbol?
Reportedly, it looked like an eye inside a circle.
An eye in a circle, like a watching eye. Did Jada recognize it?
She did. Reportedly, when shown the symbol from the other documents, she identified it immediately. called it the Watcher.
The Watcher.
Yeah, she reportedly testified that Diddy had told her back in 2004 that the Watcher would protect him and, crucially, punish those who betrayed the mission.
Okay, the Watcher symbol appearing across multiple documents, tied to Diddy's handwriting, and linked to this idea of protection and punishment that paints a very specific, very unsettling picture.
It reportedly did. Obviously, Diddy's legal team objected strongly, called the documents fabrications, part of a conspiracy.
But the judge allowed them.
Reportedly, yes.
Yeah.
The judge overruled the objections, citing the consistency across Jada's testimony and the 2 recovered documents, plus the forensic analysis. Said it warranted review by the jury.
How did the rest of the courtroom react to all this?
Reportedly, people were disturbed. The source mentioned the atmosphere shifted. It felt less like a standard contract dispute and more, as one report put it, like they were getting a look inside a spiritual cult disguised as a loyalty pact. One observer reportedly even fainted when the details of the 3rd contract were being read out.
So her testimony wasn't just about her own experience, it potentially unlocked this wider context.
That's how the source framed it. It was like a glimpse behind the curtain into something many in Hollywood might have whispered about but never seen laid out so starkly.
She talked about navigating Hollywood after that meeting.
Yeah, she reportedly claimed she spent years being very careful, avoiding certain people, certain parties, certain invitations, because she felt she now knew what they were really about.
Like there was a code.
She suggested as much, reportedly saying things like, entire calendars built around who's hosting what party, and if Diddy was involved, you know what that means. She even mentioned alleged coded phrases.
Such as,
Things like the upstairs room, or the midnight circle, or being asked to bring your aura to an event. She reportedly interpreted these as subtle invitations into what she called his net.
and she firmly believed she wasn't the only target.
Reportedly, she was very clear on that, stating something like, "I wasn't the only one approached. I was just one of the few who said no and survived it."
That phrase again, survived it, it really underscores the alleged danger.
It really does. And she reportedly admitted that over the following years, she tried to subtly warn others. Couldn't tell the full story too dangerous, but would drop hints, try to steer people away from certain situations.
Could people listen?
She reportedly said some did, some didn't. And disturbingly, she mentioned some of those who didn't listen seemed to, well, disappear from public life not long after.
And she also mentioned that others had confided in her privately.
Yes. Reportedly, a few people came to her over the years, sharing similar stories. Being presented with strange agreements offered huge opportunities tied to absolute loyalty and silence. Always framed as this amazing chance, but she said, you could feel the threat under every word.
So her perspective on people who maybe fell out of favor or vanished from the scene?
Reportedly, she came to believe many of them weren't just taking a break. They'd been damaged by the very structure they were invited to join. Used up and discarded, maybe?
It sounds like testifying was almost a release for her after holding on to this for so long.
That certainly comes across in the reporting. The silence itself became the danger. She reportedly said, "Everyone thinks the worst thing you can do is say no to power. I promise you the worst thing is staying quiet and letting that power grow."
Powerful words. Now, during all this incredibly dramatic testimony, what was Diddy's reaction? How was he reportedly behaving in court?
According to the source, his demeanor changed quite a bit. Initially, he tried to remain impassive, control his expression. But as Jada went deeper into the details of the meeting, the document, the alleged threats, his posture reportedly shifted.
How so? Any specifics?
Reportedly, yeah. He started leaning forward, rubbing his temples, whispering intensely to his attorneys, sometimes seeming to wave them off. The source highlighted a couple of key moments.
Like when she repeated that warning.
Exactly. Reportedly, when Jada said the line, "You'll regret it in the next life," he visibly flinched, like a physical reaction.
Wow.
And later, when she was describing the Watcher symbol and its alleged meaning, Diddy reportedly turned away completely, refused to make eye contact with her while she spoke about it.
It really sounds like her testimony hit a nerve, maybe caught him off guard.
That's the impression from the reports. The source described it as the first time in the trial he seemed completely unprepared. Courtroom sketch artists were apparently focused on him, trying to capture his expression. One reporter described his look as haunted.
Were other people reacting too? In the gallery?
Oh yeah. Reportedly, there were murmurs, journalists whispering back and forth. The judge apparently had to call for quiet more than once. And Diddy himself reportedly pulled out a legal pad and just started writing furiously.
Did his legal team try to stop it?
They reportedly tried, They huddled, requested a sidebar conference with the judge, and asked to have her entire testimony stricken from the record.
But the judge refused.
Reportedly, yes. The judge declined, stating that Jada came voluntarily, and her experience, especially given the corroborating documents, was relevant to the broader pattern of allegations the jury needed to consider.
And the tension went up another notch when she connected her story to the other document.
Reportedly, yes. The source specifically noted that when the similarities across the 3 alleged agreements were being discussed, that's when Diddy's hand visibly started to tremble. An observer reportedly tweeted something like, "He wiped his face. He wasn't in control anymore."
So Jada delivered most of this testimony without looking directly at him, right, until the very end.
That's what the source indicates. She reportedly addressed the court, the jury, the lawyers. But when she was asked if she had any final statement to make, she reportedly turned, and looked directly at Diddy for the first time.
And what did she say, facing him?
According to the report, it was short, quiet, but devastating. She said, "You always told me I'd regret saying no, but look around. You're the one on trial, not me."
Wow. Just wow.
Reportedly, you could have heard a pin drop. Diddy just froze. The source described the air in the room as electric, the silence feeling like accountability arriving one word at a time.
The impact must have been immediate, inside the courtroom and outside.
Totally. Headlines flew, social media just erupted, and journalists reportedly started digging, connecting her testimony to previous unexplained career collapses or rumors about Diddy's alleged methods.
And the legal fallout is still widening.
The source indicates yes. The DA's office reportedly confirmed more subpoenas were going out. They're apparently looking into patterns, not just the alleged loyalty agreements, but related contracts, shell companies, maybe even the law firms involved in enforcing silence over the years.
I remember seeing a quote from a legal analyst.
Yes, reportedly saying this could potentially become the biggest entertainment scandal since Weinstein, maybe bigger. Especially if these documents are authenticated and more people feel emboldened to come forward now.
It's really the nature of the alleged control that seems so shocking. Not just NDAs, but this whole other layer.
That's the really chilling aspect highlighted in the source material, this alleged spiritual or otherworldly dimension. The contract supposedly extending beyond death, this symbolic watcher, the threats framed almost like prophecies. It paints a picture, if true, of someone allegedly trying not just to silence people, but to fundamentally own them, body and soul.
And Jada's own credibility, her stature, reportedly played a part in how seriously this was taken.
It seems so. The judge reportedly ordered a full review of her claims, and sources noted her established career and public persona lent weight to her testimony. The perception, as the source put it, was that she had nothing to gain financially or professionally, and in fact risked everything by coming forward like this.
Did the source mention any immediate reaction from others in the industry to Jada?
Yes, interestingly. According to sources close to the courthouse, Jada reportedly started receiving messages almost immediately after testifying. Quiet calls, anonymous texts from other celebrities, many reportedly just saying, "Thank you for saying what we couldn't."
So it potentially opened a door.
It seems like it might have. The source claims several individuals who had previously been hesitant to cooperate with the investigation were now reportedly contacting the DA's office. Her testimony might have cracked the seal, as the source put it. The dam of silence wasn't holding anymore.
And there was one more piece in the source material, right, about her trying to warn people years earlier, almost like a foreshadowing.
Right, that was a fascinating detail. The source mentioned a specific incident, a private lunch back in early 2016. Reportedly, it was Jada, Beyonce, Solange Knowles, and a couple of other unnamed women prominent in the music industry. Casual meetup, no press.
And Diddy came up in conversation.
He did, and according to the source, Jada issued a quiet but firm warning to the table.
What did she say?
She reportedly told them, "If you are ever approached with anything that sounds spiritual or loyalty-based, or about legacy from Diddy or anyone in his close circle, run, just run." She apparently said, "Don't even entertain it, don't be polite about it, just walk away."
That's specific advice. Did she say why?
Allegedly, she explained her reasoning directly to Beyonce, saying something like, "Because he believes he's untouchable. He doesn't need consent, he needs control." And she reportedly added that saying no wasn't just saying no to a powerful man, it was saying no to something darker.
Wow. How did the others at the table react?
According to the source, nobody spoke up or confirmed anything at that moment. But Jada allegedly saw reactions, recognition, unease, maybe even guilt in their eyes. This detail apparently surfaced through a sidebar interview with a close friend of Jada's.
Why share it then?
The friend reportedly said Jada wanted to protect people without implicating them directly, but she was worried that if nobody ever spoke up, Diddy would just grow bolder over time.
So the ripples from her testimony are still spreading now, affecting business deals.
They seem to be. The source mentions ongoing effects. Specific production companies reportedly being investigated over potentially coercive contracts. Major music streaming service quietly removing some curated playlists allegedly linked to artists protected by Diddy's team. Even a fashion brand reportedly pulled an ad campaign that featured Diddy's image.
And Jada herself, what's her status now, according to the source?
Reportedly, she stepped back from the spotlight intentionally since testifying. The idea being to let the testimony itself echo without distortion, wants people just to sit with it.
The source material really ends on that note, doesn't it? That her decision, her testimony, might be the first real break in what seemed like an unbreakable chain of fear.
Exactly. Because, reportedly, others are stepping forward now. The silence seems to be cracking.
So pulling this all together from our deep dive into the source material, we have Jada Pinkett Smith's totally unexpected courtroom appearance, this alleged deeply disturbing loyalty agreement, and how it potentially connects to a broader, chilling pattern of alleged coercion, control, and manipulation, all based strictly on the reports we've looked at today.
Yeah, and her testimony, seemingly backed up by these other documents and the forensic analysis, has possibly shattered a decades-long silence within the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
It's pretty monumental if these reports hold true.
It really is. And it leaves you, the listener, with a pretty heavy thought to mull over, drawing from everything we've unpacked here. How can these alleged systems of power, of control, operate almost hidden in plain sight for so long? What does it actually take for that kind of silence to finally break? And what might this testimony ultimately reveal about the unseen dynamics, the real power plays potentially happening behind the scenes in industries like entertainment?